present, the defendant's present, the jury's outside the courtroom. All right, let's proffer this portion of the state's cross-examination. Dr. Gabriel mentioned to me here just a minute ago, and I'm just bringing it to y'all's attention for what it's worth. If he doesn't leave by 3:30, he's going to miss his flight back to Chicago. Okay, just so y'all know.
It's not going to happen.
Just so you know. All right, go ahead. Let's get started, please.
Yes, sir. So why don't you tell us, first of all, I wrote down a quote when you were being during your direct examination with Miss Miranda, something about hyperarousal. Why don't you tell us what you meant by that?
Well, children, particularly when they're confronted with stressful situations, one response is hyperarousal, where they get their hearts may race. They may just be sort of almost like their emotional circuits are blown.
How does that relate to him, in your opinion regarding him on the day of the murder?
Well, I don't, I only have his police statement to go by on the day of the murder and things that you told me in the deposition about his...
I object to that line of questioning as his testimony, and every question I asked him had to do with his childhood and adolescent development.
Right, it's proffer. Okay, it's proffered testimony. Let's get to the point about these incidents you want to talk to him about. Go ahead.
Let me direct your attention. Maybe you can help us, because Mr. Eisenhower and I don't know. And so maybe you can tell us all, what is your ultimate opinion in this case? What do you think? What is it about his development, his background, his experiences that relate to the murder of Sergeant Morales?
I'm saying that he had this common experience of dealing with the consequence of racism. He had the common experience of the Southern culture of honor, and as a young African-American male child, teenager, this is part of his experience that is very widespread. But the question then becomes, as you posed it, why this young African-American male ends up killing a police officer, and one in whatever it is, 1 in a million. And so I'm trying to understand how both those social, cultural conditions and why they had this particular effect in his life. And I think the adversity, the lack of supervision, all of these issues, probably heightened. And the way I often speak it with social toxicity is, some kids are sort of almost like psychologically asthmatic in the sense that they're particularly sensitive to that. And it may well be that he's described as being a very emotionally non-disclosing person, very sort of closed in. He clearly had a number of experiences. Even as a child, being 2 or 3 black kids in a white class, feeling he was discriminated against and so on.
Right, so the point is when you say his common experiences of racism, you're talking about his developmental years, but you're also talking very specifically, as you did in your deposition, about his encounters with law enforcement over the years, correct?
Well, as I said, I think I said...
Is that correct?
It is, yes, there's reference to those, yes.
Right, so when he talked to you about his encounters with law enforcement, those facts that he relayed to you, you took as the truth from him, and you incorporated them into your opinion in terms of his experiences with racism and this Southern culture of honor, correct?
I saw those as illustrations of these general social problems.
Right, and so when you rendered that opinion, the ultimate opinion that you gave to the defense earlier, it involved all of the information that he communicated to you. You incorporated all of his experiences into that opinion, correct?
Yes.
That's all I have, Judge.
Miranda, do you have any questions as to the proffer?
In your opinion, doctor, as a developmental psychologist, is in reference to his development, and that development taking place between prenatal to 18 years old?
I'll overrule the objection.
Would that be correct?
I'm sorry, could you restate that?
Okay, I'll try. That opinion that you gave about what you found to be the factors in this case was based on Eriese Tisdale's life, because you're a developmental psychologist, refer to his life being prenatal to 18 years old. Is that correct?
That's my main emphasis.
That's all I have.
Mr. Baccaro, any comment as to the Proffer testimony?
Well, yeah, let me ask you if this sounds familiar. When I first, page 6 of your deposition, the very first thing I asked you out of the gate was your opinion, and at line 17 you said, and this was the first time we talked back in August of 2015, well, I wouldn't say I'm completely finished with the process, but I would say that at this point, I would say that if you look at the development up until the time of the shooting he committed, that one of the important, very important themes is the way in which the sort of Southern culture of honor, as it's called in the research, plays a role in understanding his reactions in the past and to that day, and how his history of interactions with the police play a role in his interactions that day, how that sort of assault to dignity that he encountered, which are related to race, played a role in his behavior that day. Correct?
That's what I said, yes.
And that's your opinion, right?
Well, ultimately, yes.
And that's the opinion you offered here today, ultimately, to this jury, right?
I'm trying to remember exactly what I was asked and agreed to, but the point I'm trying to make is I think all of that childhood and adolescent experience, played a role leading up to that day. Yeah, so I guess that's a yes.
Yeah. Nothing further.
What is it you want to ask him about the police encounters? That's what the proffer's for.
So you talked to him about his encounters with law enforcement over the years, correct?
Yes.
And the information you relied on with regard to those experiences, and those are the experiences he's having that instruct him on racism and affect him, correct?
Those are some of the experiences, yes.
And the information you relied upon is the information he told you about those experiences, correct?
He is a major source, but not the only source.
Okay. He advised you that at one of his first encounters he told you about was about 16 or 17 years old when he ran in a car from the police because they had weed in the car. You remember that?
That sounds familiar, yes.
Yeah, it's on page 4 of your notes, as I counted them, and it would be on page 81, line 6 of your depot. Now, is that one of the traumatic encounters with law enforcement that affected his worldview?
It would seem so, yes.
Okay. And that was a situation where he was engaged in some criminal activity and it came into encounter with the people who were supposed to stop that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, but I think it's important to understand that one of the issues, the larger issue, is the view of the police in the African American community, which is not the same.
And he mentioned that a friend was killed by a law enforcement officer. Do you remember that?
Yes.
But he told you that that friend had been involved in some type of a domestic encounter, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And then he told you how he reacted to that, right? To the police. What did he say to the police?
He made some comment, some verbally hostile comment, and he said I snapped.
Fuck the police, he said.
Yes, I think that's the words he used.
And then he told you that the officer that was involved in that incident was a black officer, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
So that certainly wasn't a racial cop thing, was it?
Well, I think the way this is understood is mostly the race of the, if you will, the other, not the race of the law enforcement officer.
Well, it's kind of more of a cop thing, isn't it?
Well, I'm from the cop side, not from the other side.
Not from your side.
No, not from the young black male side.
And he told you about an incident where he was stopped for a DWS, and he tells you that a cop put a gun to his head, correct?
Yes, and I believe his cousin affirmed that as well.
Okay. Did you, are you aware of this was one of his arrests down in Palm Beach County, right?
I'm not sure exactly where it was.
But you're aware that the records relating to whatever he was up to the day of that incident are available for review, right?
I assume so, yes.
Right, and you certainly looked at them, didn't you?
I don't believe I was shown those records. I don't think so.
Would you like to have seen those records?
Yes.
Okay. Because otherwise all you have to go on is what he and his cousin said happened during that incident. Right?
Yes.
You know there was a gun in the car in that incident?
I know there was gun in the car in more than one incident. I don't remember if exactly that one, no.
Okay. And again, at a minimum, he's engaged in criminal activity when he comes into contact with law enforcement in that incident, right?
Yes.
And then the final one he told you about, so the third incident, well, actually there's four. The third one I want to talk about is this, where he's riding a bicycle and he's approached by the cops, right?
Yes.
And they asked him what his name was. You remember that?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. And what did he tell them?
I think he said, I'm a black man riding a bicycle. Is that the incident referring to?
Yeah. So he just kind of offered a smart aleck comment, right?
Yes.
And that's one of the traumatic experiences in his background he told you about, right?
Yes.
And there was actually a friend that was there, Dennis. Remember that?
Yes, I think so.
And did you hear what Dennis had to say about that incident?
I don't recall that, no.
And then the second incident where a police officer pulled a gun on him was an incident that happened here in Port St. Lucie after he left the gas station, right?
Yes, that sounds familiar.
Now, what he told you, and this sounds horrible, and it sounds like a significant overreaction on the part of law enforcement, is that a cop pulled him over for a suspended license and pulled a gun on him, right?
I don't remember if he said a gun was pulled in that incident, but that would certainly be consistent.
Well, I don't, hey, look, we're about the facts here, so go ahead and take a look at your notes if you think that'll help. It will be at, in your deposition, I guess maybe even help you a little bit better. It's going to be what I call page 7 of your notes, but it's going to be page 83, line 14 of your deposition. Oh yeah, you did number your notes. It's the other, somebody else's notes I had to number. So it's on page 7 of your notes.
Yes.
Right? Gas station incident.
Driving with suspended license, stopped, guns drawn, yes.
Stopped gun. So these cops and this horrible experience that he had pulled a gun on him just for driving with a suspended license, right?
Well,
That's what he says.
that's what he says, yes.
And you took that as the gospel. That's the truth. As you relied upon it in the formation of your opinions regarding his experiences with racism in America, right?
Well, recall I said earlier that, I tried to make the point that people who don't have criminal histories, who are not carrying guns or drugs, report very similar incidents all over the country.
I know nobody.
Okay.
Man, I know there's racism in the world. You're not telling anybody anything we don't know. I'm asking you about this incident and this guy that murdered a law enforcement officer. And you relied on what he told you, period, correct?
I relied on that as one account of several.
Hey, there's a whole police report in the case on that incident. Did you look at it?
I was not shown that.
Not only that, doctor, but there is a deposition, a video of that entire encounter that you could watch with your own eyes, that you could experience both visually and by hearing. Did you look at that?
No.
Because you just took his word for it, right?
No, because I was not offered these other materials.
Well, you can't lay it all on them because I told you about it, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
And did you ask to see it then?
After the deposition, no, I haven't. I think I asked. I said, I should know more about these existing documents and reports, but
Okay.
no, it's...
And if that report and that video reflects that not only is he driving on a suspended license, but when the cops turn the lights on, he takes off. He flees from the officer and he kind of in a slow speed pursuit drives about 3 times around a parking lot before he stops. That's not a normal kind of a DWLS traffic stop, right?
I don't know what the norms are, but certainly if you and I were stopped, that's probably not how we would respond.
Okay, and then more importantly, what I talked to you about was what he said in the back seat of that car. Do you remember?
I don't remember verbatim, but I think he was very nasty, verbally nasty, and said some racist things, if that's the incident you're referring to, that you did tell me about, yes.
Okay. Well, just so that we're sure we're all on the same page. Sorry, I should be a little... But I told you, he said, in the back of that car, That's page 4 of that, the transcript. I mean, there was a transcript to look at too, right?
I mean, I remember you telling me the report, there's a videotape of him saying a lot of nasty things, yes.
So the cop's up at the door. He's in the back seat of the car. The video is running. He says, "Can I use the promenade hay?" And the car door shuts. And he says, "Pussy ass cracker. Man, fuck y'all. I'll be done. Put that fire on that cracker ass." Remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
And we talked about what the term fire meant, and you kind of knew, didn't you?
I assume it meant gun or shoot.
Right. Fuck y'all, man. I'm done. Put the fire on that cracker, man. That's pretty important, isn't it?
It's certainly consistent with this negative, confrontational attitude and relationship with the police, yes.
With the police. Not necessarily with white police or black police, but the police. It's a confrontation, an issue he has with police, right?
Which comes out of a historical background, yes.
Okay. That's it.
And do you want to question Dr. Alberino on the proffer?
All of those incidences that the prosecutor has described, other than the incident when he was 16, are all after he's 18. Isn't that correct?
I believe so, but I'm not sure.
So if your testimony was that his childhood and adolescent development was affected by racism or issues with police, are you talking about the period from birth to 18?
That's my principal focus, but indeed I did ask about things afterwards just to hear the rest of the story, and would have asked about the day of the murder to hear the rest of the story, but that's not the main focus.
The rest of that story, from the time he's 18 on, that doesn't affect his childhood and adolescent development, does it, Doctor?
No.
Thank you.
State any other comment as to the admissibility?
No,
Defense, any other comment as to the admissibility of the proffered testimony? Nope.
Sorry, Judge, no.
All right, I've considered the testimony of Dr. Alberino to date, both on direct and cross-examination. I've considered the proffered testimony outside the presence of the jury. I considered the defense objection, the state's comments to it. I find this testimony relevant for cross-examination because Dr. Alberino relied on this information from Mr. Tisdale in arriving at his ultimate opinion in this case. I recognize some of it occurred prior to being 18 years old. Dr. Alberino, at least in my view, was candid. Some of it he occurred after Mr. Tisdale was 18 years old and arriving at his opinion. Thus, this testimony goes to test that opinion and weaken it, at least from the state's perspective. So I'll overrule the defense objection. We'll permit it on cross-examination as proffered. Okay, bring the jury back in, please. Thank you all for bearing with us. I apologize for the interruption. We appreciate your attention. Mr. Backenoff.
Doctor, where we left off was we discussed that your testimony, the here is that the defendant's experience with racism in America is this Southern culture of honor and so forth are instructive in trying to understand what happened on the day of the murder. And in forming that opinion, some of the information you relied upon relates to encounters that he had with law enforcement over his life, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, let's talk about those. The first thing he advised you was that at about 16 or 17 years old, he was in a car where they ran from the police because they had some weed in the car. You remember that?
Yes.
All right. Now, this would be one of his traumatic encounters with law enforcement that might affect his worldview, correct?
Yes.
And that's an incident where he's involved in criminal activity, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then he mentioned to you also that there was a friend of his that he had growing up that was killed by a law enforcement officer, right?
Yes.
Well, what he told you about that particular incident is that person was killed by a law enforcement officer committing some type of a domestic act of domestic violence or something, right?
Yes, I believe it was told it was a domestic violence incident.
And then he responded to the scene of this man's killing and did what?
He said, quote, I snapped and I said, fuck the police, and words to that effect.
Right. And the officer involved in that shooting was a black officer, an African-American officer, correct?
Yes.
So his thing in that situation was a cop thing, not a race thing, correct?
Well, in that specific incident, as you say, the officer was black, but it's a general thing about cops and black young males.
Okay. But, and to my point to you, these are the experiences he's communicating to you, right?
These are what he's communicated to me, yes.
Then he told you about an incident where he was driving on a suspended license, and how he described it was a cop put a gun to my head. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Now, this is the first time a cop pulled a gun on him in any stories that he told you, right?
I'm not sure, but I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And again, the information that you're relying upon, I mean, certainly he's got a motive to try to paint these encounters with law enforcement in a light favorable to him, right?
Yes.
And so how he describes this incident is absolutely inappropriate. A cop doesn't pull somebody over and put a gun at their head. It's not supposed to happen that way. You agree, right?
I agree.
And that makes it egregious, doesn't it?
That would make it egregious.
And that makes his experience with law enforcement that much worse, doesn't it?
It makes it conform to what a lot of people have reported has happened to them all over the country.
All right, bad cops, nobody's doubting that. Racism in America, nobody's disputing that. But we're talking about this case. And what did you do? What did you do in an effort to determine whether or not what he told you is what happened during that encounter? Did you look at a police report?
No, I did not.
There are 2 instances that occurred down in Palm Beach County, 2 arrests. One of them is this case, correct?
Yes, I think so.
Right. And did you look? You didn't look at the police report then?
It was not made available to me. I was not in the role of investigator.
And
Senator Jackson asked the clerk sidebar. And again, in that situation, in that particular encounter, which you did not independently verify what he told you about, that's another instance where he's engaged in criminal activity and encountering law enforcement, correct?
Yes, it appears so.
And then he told you about this very traumatic experience where a Port St. Lucie police officer approached him while he was on his bicycle and asked him his name, correct? You remember that?
Yes.
And he told the cop what?
I think he said, I'm a black man riding a bicycle.
Okay. And he described himself as how in dealing with the cop in that situation. Remember?
I think he used the word arrogant or something to that effect.
Okay. And that's an incident that he reported to you as being extremely traumatic to him, didn't he?
Well, I don't know if he didn't use the word extremely traumatic, but it certainly was reported as something that upset him.
Right.
And
he had a friend, Dennis. He was at Dennis's house, right? And Dennis was present for this, right?
I believe so. And then Dennis's parent or somebody came out.
Right. Did you talk to Dennis or Dennis's parent or anybody else about this incredibly traumatic event and how this thing played out?
No.
All right. And then the final incident, the second time a law enforcement officer pulled a gun on him was an incident that occurred here in Port St. Lucie when he was leaving a gas station and was being stopped for a DWS, right?
For DW?
So I beg your pardon, driving on a suspended license. Driving on a license suspended.
Okay.
Whatever.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. What did he tell you about that?
Well, it was just another incident of negative encounters with the police.
Well, it's more than that because he told you something specifically that the cop did, right? Police officer.
Well, I think I'll have to refresh my memory on that. Which one that one is?
It's at page 7 of your notes. It's at page 83, line 14 of your deposition.
Oh, yes. He says, said he was stopped with the cops with, what he said was guns drawn, as I recall.
Right. So for a simple driving, just like the other story he told you, for a simple driving on a suspended license, the cops stop him and pull a gun on him, right?
That's what he said.
And that certainly would be traumatic and not appropriate in any way, shape, or form. Would you agree?
No, although very common, but not appropriate.
Okay. Well, maybe common, but not factual in this case, is it?
I don't know for sure.
Right. So you're also aware that there was a report written regarding that incident, correct?
I assume there was. I haven't seen it.
And if that report reflects that what happened is when they turned their lights on, the defendant refused to stop and then took them on a slow-speed chase around a parking lot before he ultimately stopped the vehicle, that wouldn't be consistent with how he described that event, right? He's saying, I stopped for a license suspended and they're pulling a gun on me, right?
I don't recall if he talked about driving around in circles or not. He may well have, but I don't have it in my notes. I don't know.
And of course, because you didn't look at the report, right?
Right.
And more importantly, there's a video of that encounter, isn't there?
I believe you told me there is, yes.
Right. And did you look at the video?
No.
And in fact, when I just talked to you on Saturday, I talked to you about the video, right?
Yes, and I took it as an accurate version that you were presenting.
Okay. You didn't want to see it yourself?
Well, it's probably a question of time and energy.
Time and energy?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about a statement that he made on that video. So the video is running in the back of the car, and then you can hear the defendant say, can I use the phone? Hey, and the door shuts. So presumably the officer has shut the door. And he says the following, pussy-ass cracker, man, fuck y'all. I'll be done, put that fire on that cracker, man.
Yes, that is what you told me. He said, I accept it executive.
And I asked you, what does that mean you put that fire on that cracker, man? You knew, didn't you?
I thought it meant shoot, use a gun.
Right. And then what did you say about that statement in the context? That you indicated that's pretty important, isn't it?
Well, I think it's further illustration that this was not a nice, innocent kid being pulled over. This was a guy who had many encounters, stimulated at least in part by his own drug dealing. But it's understandable, I think, given the larger context, and that kind of hostile, negative, aggressive talk is very common, and it goes both ways, as you well know. We don't use the word fuck often between us, but it's used a lot on the street by the cops and by the people they're apprehending.
A clear pattern in all of that, when he describes his encounters with law enforcement, most importantly, Doctor, is that he's engaged in some form of criminal activity, correct?
In those instances, yes.
And so you must acknowledge that on some level, what it is a cop thing. You agree?
I think it's a cop thing, yes.
Did he redirect?
Did you just say that being black and riding a bike is a criminal activity, Doctor? Did you intend to say that?
I didn't intend to say that. I'm just assuming that since if he was known in the community, they may have suspected.
Okay, so you're assuming, but the fact that the state gave you was that this stop that occurred was just him on his bicycle. There was no other nefarious activity going on. Isn't that right?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, now, and the incident that the state is talking about in 2010, and Eriese Tisdale was born in 1987, how old would that have made him?
Well, what, 23?
So he's over 18, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you, sir, you're a developmental psychologist, isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you study the development and the adverse effects of development on someone from prenatal effect to 18. Would that be correct?
That's the focus of my work, yes.
Okay. Judge, if I say the name Chester Washington, does that mean anything to you?
I don't know.
Okay. Judge, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Judge, can we approach?
Yes.
I have no idea what she had.
Approach the witness, Your Honor. Thank you, sir. Now, Doctor, if I show you something, might that refresh your recollection as to who Chester Washington is?
I hope so.
If you'll just look at this and look at the word that's underlined on this document.
Googie, which I believe was a nickname for Chester Washington.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so when we talk about Chester Washington, we're talking about Eriese Tisdale's friend, who you know to be
Googie.
Googie. Right. So, could you refresh, you were talking about Googie when the state was asking you questions earlier. Is that correct?
Yes.
About an incident that happened at Limestone Creek community where Eriese Tisdale lives. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that incident...
Judge, I'm going to object to the leading nature of the questions.
Sustain the objection. It's redirect examination.
How did you classify that incident earlier in direct exam or cross-examination with the state?
How did I classify it?
Yes.
I believe the state said it was a domestic incident. I have in my notes a domestic fight.
Okay. Now, are you sure about that?
Well, that's what's in my notes, but a guy killed by the police, Big Googie was killed by the police, friend of Eriese, and domestic fight is what it's there.
So, Big Googie was killed by the police. And do you remember what it was about that incident that was so traumatic for Eriese?
Well, I believe he said, I was 17 or 18. He was so scared that a friend of his could be killed like that.
Doctor,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
can I show you this to see if it will
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm just going to direct you to 2 points here where the arrows are.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry, that.
I'm sorry.
This is first and this is
Yeah,
second.
okay.
Sorry.
All right,
So what time did this incident occur? Do you remember?
well, these notes say 10:40 p.m. Was a call to the police.
He's not testifying from a fresh recollection. He's reading off this document.
All right, well, Ms. Miranda, you can ask him if his recollections were fresh, and then ask him that based on what you...
Did that refresh
Not from
recollection, Doctor?
I think so. I remember it happening at night.
Okay. And at what time was Googie's body recovered?
Well, I think, I don't even know if it's in my notes, but I remember a long period, and that was partly what was so upsetting.
Okay. So what was so upsetting to Eric about Googie being killed by the police? Was it just the fact that he was shot by the police?
Well, I think partly what upset him was this feeling of disregard for his friend and leaving the body out there for a long period.
Now, you talked on cross-examination about Eric having male role models. Is that right?
I believe we talked about that, yes.
And do you recall who these male role models were?
Well, there was a man who he presumed was his father. There was his uncle.
Now, when you said the man that was presumed to be the father, you testified earlier that Eric found the true identity of his father when he was 10.
Something like that, when he was still a child.
So, was that person in his life past 10 years old?
The person he presumed was his father?
Yes.
I've forgotten when he disappeared, but certainly not through adolescence.
And who else were you referring to when you were talking about male role models?
Well, his maternal uncle, who died of a heart attack, I think. I think those are the two that stick out in my mind.
Okay. Now, you talked on cross-examination about schools that Eric attended in his childhood.
Yes.
Okay. Now, is there anything about those particular schools that stand out as a reason why Eric would have been marginalized?
Well, as I understand, he went to basically all-white school with 2 or 3 other black kids with a white teacher, and he reported feeling very marginalized, and he talked at some point about Confederate flags being around and all the paraphernalia that goes with that.
Now, on cross-examination, when the state questioned you about wealth, you were cut off, Doctor. What is it that you wanted to say about the wealth?
About the wealth?
Wealth.
Oh, wealth. So that, there is a lot of evidence that African-American parents use what by mainstream standards is severe corporal punishment more than other groups, and there's a whole line of analysis about where that comes from. But using a belt to leave welts in many jurisdictions is evidence of child abuse.
Okay. Now, you also talked about psychological abuse. What did you mean when you said that there was psychological abuse present?
Well, I think I said psychological maltreatment, which includes abuse and neglect, but I think certainly this humiliating disciplinary technique of this man Lionel, who was in the household, forcing him to stand in his underwear in the doorway as punishment, and that kind of aggressive, humiliating treatment. Certainly, despite the fact that his mother loved him, she, as I understand it from her report and the report of her sister, she had her own substance abuse problems, at least during pregnancy. It's unclear how much longer after that. And then she worked very, very hard and many long hours to provide the basics, but I think even by her own recollection, that leads to a lack of supervision, and certainly Eriese reports it that way, that he was lonely and unsupervised. a latchkey child, I think even.
All right, doctor. So when you are referring to childhood and adolescent development, if a parent is outside the home because they're working 2 and 3 jobs, and there is no other parent there, how would you describe that?
Well, I think it's lack of supervision, it's lack of support, and you could even construe it as psychological unavailability, as it's called, which is tantamount to a kind of emotional neglect, inadvertent perhaps, but having that effect.
Now, the state asked you earlier about the studies that show the effect of a missing father. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Now, you just testified that a mother who's not present in the home because she's working 2 or 3 jobs, is that also a form of abandonment?
Well, certainly from a child's point of view, it could be, yes.
Okay. And what do the studies say about maternal abandonment?
Well, I think as was raised earlier, that certainly my reading of this research is that maternal abandonment is about the worst thing. Certainly when it's a really extreme abandonment, this is obviously very different from that, but a child could certainly feel lonely and unsupervised and on his own.
Now, you talked earlier also about antisocial aggressiveness. Can you tell us what that means?
Well, I think what I mentioned before is referring to the fact that, when the state was talking about the 85% of cases, that the most common form, which you usually see is reports and fighting in school, aggression against other children. If they're seeing a psychologist, they get diagnosed with something called conduct disorder, an escalating pattern of aggressive antisocial behavior, often beginning in childhood, extending through adolescence, which culminates in a murder. Whereas, as I understand the life here, there's no pattern of that culminating in this murder. There's the drug dealing and the driving without licenses and all of that sort of stuff, but that's very different.
Now, you talked about the view of police in black communities. What does the research show about that?
Well, as I said, it shows that, predominantly whites think that, about half of whites think that the police are even-handed, fair in their treatment of blacks and whites. The overwhelming majority of blacks don't see it that way. And given the numbers about enforcement of drug laws, law enforcement shootings, all of these other measures, the courtroom evidence I mentioned before, all of that supports the view and the increasing availability of videotape confrontations that result in the death of young black males. All of this speaks to the fact this isn't some fantasy on the part of black Americans. There's a reality basis for it. The fact that most black mothers at least tell me they have to have the talk with their boys about it, and they fear. I think both his mother and aunt said they reported that they fear their young black males getting through adolescence, early adulthood into adulthood because they fear they will be shot. Not just by the police. Most of the black young men who are killed by other black young men. That's probably 90% or more. So I don't want to misrepresent that, but it's part of this larger fear that they often say, young black males are sort of an endangered species, that to get them through is a great struggle. And the police part of it is just one element.
I will really objection. You can go ahead and finish, Doctor.
So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
State have anything else?
Just one question. Doctor, you'd indicated that this Lionel character that was in the house was in the house for a year, this abusive boyfriend of...
That's what I have in my notes, yes.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that Ms. Tisdale indicated she kicked him out after a couple of months, maybe 4, maybe 5?
It wouldn't surprise me partly because family members recall these things very differently. He was young; it may have seemed like a longer time. It's quite possible. Still a significant amount of time.
Right, anything else, and this will be it.
On the Lionel issue, you said that Lionel made him stand in the doorway in his underwear. Do you recall anything else about what he would make him do in that open doorway as people walk by?
I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Is he released? You need him to stay. Okay, release him?
Yes.
State's okay to release him?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. Appreciate you bearing with us. Would you all call your next witness, please?
So at this time, the defense would call Holly Beer.
Okay. Come in, please.
Holly Beer.
Thank you, ma'am, very much for bearing with us. We're going right up here. Watch your step over those wires there for me. This nice lady will place you under oath, ma'am.
Do you swear upon the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. Step over to your left. Watch stepping in for me.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
Could you please tell us your name and spell your last name for the record?
my name is Holly Beer, B-E-E-R,
And Ms. Beer, where do you work?
Jupiter Middle School,
How long have you worked at Jupiter Middle School?
17 years.
And what do you do there?
I teach 7th grade social studies.
Could you just come up to the mic just a little bit so we can hear you? 'Cause
Okay.
your voice is, I know you're much louder than that in 7th grade.
Yes,
Okay. How long have you been teaching?
this is my 21st year.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I heard. What subject do you teach?
Social studies.
And do you recall a student by the name of Eriese Tisdale?
I do.
Okay. And how did you know Eriese?
I taught Eriese in 7th grade, and I had him in my class.
Okay. Now, how many students do you estimate that you've taught in those 21 years?
Over 2,000.
That's a lot of students.
Yes.
Do you remember all of them?
No,
And about how long would you say that you taught Eriese?
for the whole year, 7th grade, for a whole year, 180 days.
And that was about 15 years ago?
I don't know how old he is, but yeah, he would have been 13 when I had him.
So it seems unusual that you would remember one of your students. Why did you remember Eriese?
Eriese he was just funny. He was a silly kid, and I tend to remember those kids. He just always made you laugh. He was just a funny, silly kid.
Would you look forward to Eriese coming to your class?
I did. If it was a rough day or something, you knew he was going to come in, make you laugh. It's like the class clown.
I'm sorry, you referred to Eriese as the class clown?
Sometimes, yeah, he liked to get the kids to laugh and make them laugh. Yes.
Did you have to redirect them sometimes?
Yes, of course. But, yes.
And as far as his grades, was he an average student?
As far as I can remember, yes.
So he wasn't one of the people you would remember because they had really good grades. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Ms. Beer, what did your dad do?
He was a police officer.
Is it difficult for you to be here today?
Yes.
Why did you come here today?
Just to say what he was like when I had him. He was a happy, funny kid. So,
Pardon me?
May I get this one? How do you remember 13-year-old Eric?
just a fun kid. I mean, like you said, I've had over 2,000 kids, and I remember him. He was silly, just made you laugh.
How many kids from Jupiter Middle School have been charged with murder?
I don't know how many kids in Jupiter Middle School have been charged.
I'll overrule the objection. If you know, ma'am.
How many of your former students?
4.
And have you testified for any of them?
Just this one.
Just Eric.
Yes.
Thank you.
Back at all, Mr. Eisenhower.
Just a couple, Your Honor. I think you said average student, middle of the class. Yes?
As far as I remember, yes.
No learning disabilities or any problems like that, you recall.
Not that I recall.
And he always seemed to be, well taken care of, well groomed, well nourished, things like that.
As far as I can remember, yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Miranda, any redirect?
No, Judge, and I would release you.
Okay with the state to let her go?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. You're free to go, ma'am. You're welcome to stay, of course, if you wish. Just watch stepping down. Would you all call your next witness, please?
Vanessa, Tyree.
Ms. Tyree, come in, please. Thank you, ma'am, for bearing with us. Please place you under oath.
Do you swear or affirm that evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. Just step over here. Watch stepping in front.
Hi.
Hello.
Go ahead and state your name, please.
Vanessa Tisdale Tyree.
And what is your relationship to Eric?
He is my nephew.
Okay.
His mother is my sister.
I'm sorry?
His mother is my sister.
Okay. And what's the makeup of your family, your immediate family?
3 sisters. My sister Charmaine, my older sister Noretta. I'm the middle child. We have a very small family. Both our parents died at a very early age.
Excuse me for interrupting. They needed her to spell her last name.
Oh, sorry about that.
Tyree. Tyre.
I get that. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, just and make sure you speak up.
Okay.
Okay. Where are you from?
West Palm Beach. I'm originally from New Jersey, but I've been living in Florida, West Palm Beach for the last 35 years.
And what's the last level of schooling you completed?
College graduate.
Is that something everybody in the family received?
No, I think I was the first, yes.
And what kind of work did you do?
Social worker, the state of Florida.
How many years?
35 years.
You also work in another field?
I do taxes with HR Block.
Okay, you currently working?
No, I just retired in June.
You still going to do HR Block?
HR Block, yes, I will.
And what is the relationship like between you and your sisters?
very, very close-knit. As I said, it's just the three sisters. We had no brothers. Our whole family is very small. In Jersey, we don't have any really any uncles or aunts still alive. Most of them have been deceased. My mother had pretty much a large family, and my father, but my mother died in the age of about 47, and my father at age, I believe, was 60 of a heart attack. My mother had leukemia, cancer.
Did your sisters live near you?
Yes. My sister, my older sister, Loretta, used to live right next door to me. Charmaine, well, she moved here when Erice was 1 year old, and she's lived in West Palm Beach and in Jupiter and Port St. Lucie.
Okay, and how much of Erice's life has been in your life?
Pretty much all of his life. If I can, I guess, elaborate. Erice was born in New Jersey, but probably about close to the age of 1, he came to live with us in West Palm Beach, me and my husband. He probably lived with us, Charmaine and Erice, maybe about a year, maybe 2. So she got on her feet, she found a couple jobs, she got her own place, and they live independently. But most of the time when Charmaine was working, she would bring Erice to me, and he would go to the daycare along with my daughter, who was only 1 year older than him. So they're very close.
Okay, and did you say Loretta lived next door?
Yes, she did, before she got remarried.
And when was that?
Probably about 12, 14 years ago.
Okay. Does she still maintain a residence next door to you, though?
Yes, she has. Her home is there.
Someone else lives there?
Yes, someone else lives there. Her daughter still lives there.
Okay.
Her son did.
Okay, and you said that Erice and his mom moved down when he was like 1 or 2?
Approximately 1.
Okay. And lived in West Palm Beach, did he, right?
Yes.
Close to where the other sisters were living?
Yes.
And did he ever live with you?
Yes, he did. On a couple occasions.
Okay.
The main one I remember is when he went to high school. He went to the Survivors Charter School. The reason that happened, Charmaine was living in Jupiter, and as far as we knew, the neighborhood was okay. She soon found out that there was some drug addiction right next door with the children about Erice's age. So they had to move down to our house, and he continued his last year of school at Survivors Charter School. My husband was alive then and took him to school every day. It was right there in West Palm Beach off of Congress.
Okay, and is there any significance with the word Survivor Charter School?
I'm not exactly sure of that.
But prior to high school, and that last year of high school, he was living with you and your family?
Yes.
Mom still stayed up in Jupiter?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever know of the mom to have more than one job?
Oh, yes. Multiple, 2 or 3 at times.
Okay. And what was the reason for moving to Jupiter?
Well, she was able to buy her own home.
Okay.
It was first home.
Low income home?
Low income home, yes.
For people that...
Single, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it was government assisted?
Yes, it was.
Now, you said that Erice moved to Florida when he was a baby, a toddler.
Yes.
What was his disposition like as a baby?
For the most part, Erice was really much a normal child. The family, his mother, Charmaine, and Erice were like the comedians of the family. Whenever we had get-togethers, they would have us laughing. They always had my sister Charmaine. I pretty much grew up with her like that. No behavior problems with Erice. Sometimes quiet to himself.
Okay, but that's I'm talking about in his early years.
Okay. Toddler, no problems. Like to watch. You remember a movie called The Bebe Kids, and also Super Mario. Bebe Kids. You watched that movie? Yeah, Bebe Kids. We watched it over and over again. Playing games, Super Mario type of games. But no real problems at all with this.
Okay. And Were you actively in his life as when he was going through school?
Yes, definitely.
Are you familiar with the schools that he attended?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you remember which elementary school?
I believe it was Limestone Creek. That's in Jupiter. Went to school there in 3rd, 4th grade. And Jupiter Middle. I remember his graduation from Jupiter Middle School. And then it was the Survivors Charter where he did graduate. I was there for the graduation.
Okay. And the reason why he would change school during any particular year, would that be just because his mom moved?
Yes, but he stayed in Limestone Creek was in Jupiter, and also middle school was in Jupiter. And he also went to Jupiter High School for a period of time.
Did he go to another high school as well?
That's the Survivors, his last year of high school.
Was there another high school in West Palm Beach he attended?
No, high school, no, I don't know.
Okay. All right. So after high school, when did he end up moving out?
Okay. Well, we had some traumatic family event in 2004 where Eriese was living with me. His last year of high school, he was going to Survivors. My husband suffered a major heart attack. He was going for a simple operation, a stent to be put in his heart, and he died on the operating table.
That was in 2004?
2004, December. And he had not had any kind of heart problems before that. So he died at, how old was my husband? 65.
In 2004?
And Eriese was approximately about 17. And then within a week of that, my older sister's son, my nephew again, Rajan, who lived right next door to me, died by gunshot. So as I'm suffering and grieving with my husband, out the clear blue sky, someone shoots my nephew, who lived right next door. These two men were the main role models for Eriese.
Okay. What was Erice's relationship with your husband?
I mean, type of relationship?
Yes.
Very good. I remember my husband would have him outside cleaning up the yard, cutting grass, cutting trees, things like that. And we all did a lot of, all our family birthdays, holidays were spent together, the whole family. I love the beach, so we all kind of went to the beach usually probably about once a month at least. And Eriese is right there with us. We have a very affectionate, very close family, very close-knit, because we were just a few of us. And as I said, my husband was taking him to school at Survivors every day.
His last year?
His last year, when this happened.
Okay, what month did your husband die?
December 2004.
Was it December, or was it the year of his senior year that he died?
Yes, it was, that same senior year.
So who ended up bringing Eriese to school when your husband died?
Probably myself or another family member, I don't remember exactly.
Okay. And it was after your husband, a week later, is when his cousin...
Yes, cousin Rajan died, yes, gunshot.
Okay. Did he live next door?
He lived right next door, very close to Eriese, myself. They were very close. They would do going out shopping. I don't know if they did any fishing. Rajan liked to fish. So as I said, I know that affected Eriese quite a bit. I know it did. I believe that's also when he started doing the rapping and singing. Eriese, for the most part, was a private person. I think he did not share a lot of his feelings and emotions. I feel it's like not a male thing, but a lot of males don't. They keep things to themselves. And so, even though we didn't see anything drastic happen to Erice's attitude, but I know that he shared his feelings and started with the rapping as a result of those two deaths.
Was there anything special about the rapping that came out because of the death of your husband and his cousin?
Just that it was more like it's rough out here in this world. You have to be strong to survive, that type of thing. Can't remember the exact words in it, but...
Okay, so you, did he write something?
Yes, he did. He wrote the rap song. Yes.
Okay, so you wrote a song?
Yes, he did.
And it was dedicated to?
Yes, my husband and Rajan, yes.
And you were explaining to us, what was the lyrics like?
Lyrics, no, that won't do. Some of the words I remember, that is tough out in this world, it's hard trying to survive, we must stay strong, and it's something to the effect of being 6 feet deep under, how hard that is on the family, that we will try to live on even though they have died. That was pretty much all I can remember exactly.
And you're saying that that was when he started to express himself in...
Yes, in the rap music, yes.
Judge, can I approach?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to... Do I have mine? Can I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to show you pictures. I want to just look at them for a minute. Kind of keep them in the order of age.
Oh, okay.
Do you recognize these pictures I'm showing you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You recognize
So
the pictures?
Yes, I do.
I'm sure y'all one person talk at a time because she's having a hard time taking down what you say. So.
Okay. Okay, you recognize the pictures?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what's the first picture that you see?
This is a picture of Charmaine and Eriese. He was approximately, I think he was less than 1 year old.
Okay, show it to me. I just want to identify the picture.
Okay.
Who are the two people in that picture?
Charmaine Tisdale and Eriese Tisdale.
Okay, and that is Defense Exhibit 6. Okay. Do you recognize the next picture?
Yes, I do.
And who's in that picture?
Eriese Tisdale.
Okay. And do you recognize him, anything about him, his age or anything?
Approximately about 4 years old.
Okay, and where is that located?
That, it looks like that's in West Palm Beach, one of the first apartments that Charmaine lived in.
Okay. And that would be Defense Exhibit 7. Next picture. Do you recognize that picture?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what is it a picture of?
Of Eriese Tisdale.
And how about approximately the
He was in Limestone Creek Elementary School, approximately 3rd, 4th grade.
Okay. And that's Defense Exhibit 8. And then next picture there, do you recognize that picture?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize?
This is Eriese Tisdale, 3rd grade at Limestone Creek Elementary School, with his classmates.
Okay. And that's Defense Exhibit 9. Next picture, do you recognize the people in that picture?
Yes, I do.
Who are they?
Charmaine Tisdale and Eriese Tisdale. I believe this was at Jupiter Middle graduation.
Okay. So how old would he have been in about?
What, about 15, 16?
Maybe a little younger.
Yeah, maybe 14, 15.
Were you in his life when he was...
Oh, definitely, yes. I was there for the graduation.
And that's Defense Exhibit 10. And next picture?
Eriese Tisdale at graduation at Charter Survivors High School.
Okay, and would he have turned 17, but he has still been 17 or did he turn 18?
I'm probably still 17.
Okay. And that's Defense Exhibit 11, showing you another picture.
The three sisters, myself, Vanessa, Tyree, Charmaine Tisdale, and my older sister, Noretta Tisdale.
Okay. Defense Exhibit 14. Okay. I'm showing you, but let's hold on to them for a minute. And then I'm showing you, were you part of Erice's life when he graduated from high school, you said, right?
Yes, I was. He was living with me at the time.
Did you go to his graduation?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and do you recognize that document?
Diploma from charter school, Eriese Tisdale.
Okay.
High school diploma.
And is it a diploma?
Yes, diploma, yes.
Okay. Did you see, was there a period in Erice's life that you saw him more often than not?
More often.
What ages of Erice did you see him more?
More often when he was younger, say between 4 to 15, 16.
Okay. And then what about the year he lived with you?
And the year he lived with me, yeah, that was for about a year. Okay. Yes, 1 year.
So when he got past the age of graduation, did he move away?
Yes, he did. He would move back with his mother. I believe it was to Port St. Lucie.
Okay. And just want to hold that so I don't have to keep walking back and forth. Okay. And being that you were in his life, quite often. Did you also know when he started working?
Yes, he worked multiple jobs. First job was probably close to my home around the corner. I live close to Congress in Okeechobee. There were several. There's Wendy's, there's McDonald's. He worked at a Wendy's. He worked at Miami Subs.
Okay, and were these jobs that he held during the school year or during the summer or something?
Sometimes during the school year and summer.
Okay. And tell us, what were the places that you remember him working?
I remember working at a Wendy's.
Okay.
I remember him working at Miami Subs. Brandsmart, which was right around the corner.
Okay.
From where I lived. Those were the jobs he, earlier years.
Okay.
For the age of 17, I would say.
And did he ever have a job that involved something that his mom did as well?
Yes, surface chemist. He would help. His mother did the maintenance there at that surface chemist, and he would come in and help her clean the facility.
Okay, and did he ever later on get a full-time job?
Yes, he was able to acquire a full-time job there. I'm not sure exactly what he did there, but I believe it was a chemical type of place, so he did some work there. Mm-hmm.
And did he ever, you ever remember getting a job at an energy company?
Yes, I think that was during, it was some type of grant that he got involved in and was able to work with another fellow with that. I'm not sure how long it lasted, but I think the grant when it fell through or they ran out of money.
Okay. And did you ever know him to work at any collection agency?
Yes, at least two. I believe the first one was in Boca. He was living at my home then, and I also believe that was the beginning of some of his law enforcement as far as being late for work, because he had to go down to Boca from West Palm Beach and running late and getting some traffic tickets and probably didn't pay him.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You recall that?
Yes, I do.
And that was in his later teen years?
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm.
You started hearing about those things?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you just said that he started having some issues. What can you tell us about his personality as a teen?
In his younger years, it was more kind of happy, comical. As he got older, different. When you would ask Erice a question, it was more a yes and no. He stayed kind of private to himself. So, be truthful. Things that might have been going on with him, I didn't know. As I expressed, he kept his feelings and emotions to himself, and I do believe that most men do that. Males do. So some things that might have been going on with him, I might not have known, even though we were all still very close.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so when he was a teen, and that's when you talked about the rapping and stuff getting into the music area. What about you as a person? How did he treat you?
I had no problems with that. Very respectful. Our whole family is very affectionate to each other, so we all always hug and say I love you to each other all the time. I didn't have any kind of behavioral problems with theirs.
Do you ever remember when you lived with you having to go to school to pick him up for any kind of disciplinary issues?
No, I don't. No.
He was characterized earlier as like a class clown. That fits his character?
Yes, it does.
Can you share anything about that with us?
Just different little sayings or things that the way he would pronounce something in a different way to make us, the family, laugh, things like that. Him and his mother. His mother, we call his mother Charmaine Medea of the family.
Okay.
You know, Medea is...
Funny lady?
Yes.
Okay.
Tyler Perry? Anyone know? Okay. That's Charmaine.
Yeah. Give me a little...
Okay, yeah.
And were holidays and birthdays the only times you got together with the family, or did you...
Those are most of the days, times. But sometimes on the weekends we just, you know, would get together for having dinner. Charmaine loved to cook. Like I said, I love the beach, things like that.
Did you do anything religious together?
Oh yes, we attend the same church. Eriese and my daughter both attend the same church. Charmaine is the choir director. I've been going to that church probably about over 20 years, same church. And she also attended with me. As I said, she's the choir director. And our children are right there with us. Eriese and Lauren, my daughter, were right there with us in church.
Now, you mentioned that you started having a little bit of run-ins with the law with speeding tickets and not paying tickets with his license and stuff. Do you know of any other incidences growing up around, Eriese growing up around you, that he had where there was run-ins that you remember him specifically talking to?
I only remember that he was selling sneakers. He was in the area trying to make a little extra money, so I believe him and Mom were selling sneakers, and they got robbed. I'm not sure how much the police was involved with that, but I know he started to be more protective of himself after that robbery.
And was that when he was a young adult or still a teen?
No, he was a teenager, probably young adult. Young adult.
Okay. And how was, did he actually share with you how he felt?
Not really, no.
And how did you observe Eriese with his mom?
He loved his mother, she loved him. Like I said, our whole family is very affectionate. And we usually say, I love you. I know they did to each other probably every day. So they had a close relationship.
Okay, and do you know who would watch Eriese over the years when he was younger, when the mom was working with jobs?
Probably myself and my husband. And we had a close babysitter that lived not too far from us, would help out.
And what about when he wasn't living with you and he was out in West Palm Beach and Jupiter?
No, I don't know of anyone that was, no.
And he was the only child?
Only child.
Did you know any of Charmaine's male friends?
Yes, I did know of a couple.
Any of them, do you recall any instances where it was negative with Eriese?
Well, I do remember the Lionel incident, and she had another friend who was, I think, in the service, Army maybe, and was very, very strict on Eriese. I don't remember any exact incidents, but I remember him being a very strict person and very strict with Eriese, and he probably did watch over Eriese when Charmaine was at work at times.
Did you ever hear of any of abusive situations between Eriese and these men?
Probably just the Lionel incident.
Okay, and you're talking about the incident and standing in the doorway?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Was that something that you and the sisters talked about?
No, not really.
Okay, this is something you found out.
Yes.
Past Lionel, the whole...
Past Lionel, yes.